Ever pondered why suffering is a universal part of the human experience? A question that has perplexed philosophers, scientists, and ordinary individuals alike. This shared sentiment of suffering or dissatisfaction is not a modern phenomenon, but a timeless characteristic of human life. It spans across cultures, races, and generations, uniting us in an intricate web of shared experiences. As we journey through life, we encounter various forms of suffering. It may manifest as physical pain, emotional turmoil, or even the subtle dissatisfaction lurking in the shadows of our seemingly perfect lives. No one is immune to it. But why? Why is suffering so intricately woven into the fabric of our existence? This universal question led a young prince from ancient India on a quest. A quest for understanding, a quest for enlightenment. This prince, Siddhartha Gautama, would later be known to the world as Buddha, the Enlightened One. But what prompted this journey? Born into royalty, Siddhartha led a life of luxury and privilege. Shielded from the harsh realities of the world, he lived in blissful ignorance until the day he ventured beyond the palace walls. What he saw was an unfiltered view of life and its inevitable suffering, disease, old age, and death. Shaken by these harsh realities, Siddhartha abandoned his royal life to find an answer to the enigma of existence. He sought to understand why we suffer and how we can alleviate this universal affliction. His relentless pursuit of truth led him to a profound realization, a revelation that would form the foundation of one of the world's most impactful philosophies. Buddha's teachings, encapsulated in the Four Noble Truths, provide a comprehensive framework to understand and navigate through the sea of suffering. He taught that suffering is not an unavoidable fate, but a part of life that can be understood and transcended. Buddha, through his enlightened journey, offered a profound framework to understand this suffering: the Four Noble Truths. These truths, explored in the subsequent scenes, offer a beacon of hope, guiding us towards a life of peace and liberation. The first noble truth Buddha taught is dukkha, often translated as suffering or dissatisfaction. This concept is not simply about physical pain or mental distress. It delves deeper, touching upon the nuanced aspects of human existence that are often overlooked. Dukkha is a multi-layered term, encapsulating the myriad forms of unease we experience in life. From the subtle dissatisfaction that stems from the impermanence of all things, to the more obvious forms of sorrow and discomfort, dukkha is a pervasive undercurrent that permeates all aspects of our existence. Let's explore this concept further. The Buddha taught that dukkha arises in three distinct forms. The first is dukkha, the suffering of suffering. This is the most apparent kind of dukkha, the one we're all too familiar with. It includes physical and emotional pain, illness, aging, and inevitable death. The second form is viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This dukkha arises from the knowledge that our happiest moments are fleeting. It is the anxiety, the unease that comes from recognizing the transient nature of all things. The joy from a delicious meal, the bliss of a loving relationship, the pride of an accomplishment. All these pleasures are transient, and their inevitable change or loss leads to suffering. The third form is sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned states. This is the subtlest form of dukkha, a sense of unease that exists simply because we are alive, conscious, and subject to the relentless march of time and causality. While this might seem a bleak outlook on life, it is not intended to be pessimistic. Rather, it is a realistic assessment of our human condition. Buddha did not deny the existence of happiness and joy. Instead, he pointed out their impermanence, highlighting the fact that, even in our happiest moments, the seed of dukkha is present. Understanding dukkha, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness of life, is the first step towards liberation. It's about acknowledging this fundamental truth of our existence, and with that acknowledgement, we can begin to navigate the path towards liberation, towards a life of deeper understanding and peace. The second noble truth, Samudaya, explores the origin of this suffering. The teachings of Buddha shed light on the fact that the root causes of suffering are desire and ignorance. He observed that our world is filled with transient things, ephemeral in nature. Our attachment to these fleeting things, our desire to hold on to them, leads to dukkha, the inevitable suffering. Let's delve deeper into this concept. Buddha believed that desire, in its many forms, is a fundamental cause of suffering. This isn't just about the physical cravings we experience, but also the longing for wealth, success, praise, and even the desire for eternal life. These desires can lead to a constant state of dissatisfaction, as the reality often falls short of our expectations. We find ourselves in a perpetual cycle of wanting, getting, and then wanting more, which only fuels the flames of dukkha. But desire isn't the only culprit. Ignorance, according to Buddha, plays a significant role in our suffering. It's our ignorance of the true nature of things that leads us to form attachments. We fail to see that everything in this world is temporary and constantly changing. We are ignorant of the fact that our own selves, our identities, are not fixed, but fluid and ever-changing. This ignorance leads us to form unrealistic expectations and cling on to things, ideas, and even people. We try to resist the natural flow of life, to fight against the tide of change. But as Buddha pointed out, this is a futile endeavor. It only leads to frustration, disappointment, and ultimately suffering. But there's a silver lining here. Buddha didn't just identify the causes of suffering, he also pointed out a path to end it. The key lies in recognizing and understanding our own desires and ignorance. By becoming aware of our attachments and the unrealistic expectations we form, we can begin to let go. We can learn to accept the transient nature of things, to flow with the currents of life rather than against them. We can learn to live in the present, appreciating what we have, instead of constantly longing for more. Recognizing and understanding our own desires brings us closer to overcoming suffering. The third noble truth, Nirodha, gives us hope by stating that suffering can indeed end. This truth is a beacon of hope and a promise of tranquility, a radical shift from the relentless cycle of suffering we've previously explored. Buddha's teachings put forward a profound assertion: our suffering can cease by eliminating desire and ignorance. This might seem like a daunting task, a mountain too high to climb, but let's take a moment to reflect on the essence of this truth. It's not about denying our feelings or suppressing our needs. Rather, it's about understanding the nature of desire and the roots of ignorance. Desire, in its essence, is a longing for something not in our possession. It's a thirst that's never fully quenched, a fire that's constantly fueled. By recognizing the transient nature of our desires, we can start to detach ourselves from them. We learn that our happiness doesn't hinge on the fulfillment of every longing, but on our ability to find contentment within ourselves. Ignorance, on the other hand, is a lack of understanding, a blindness to the true nature of reality. It's not merely the absence of knowledge, but the presence of misconceptions and misunderstandings. By cultivating wisdom, we can remove the veils of ignorance that cloud our perception. We can see things as they are, not as we believe or want them to be. Now imagine a state where you're free from the shackles of desire and the fog of ignorance. This state, known as nirvana, represents the ultimate spiritual goal in Buddhism. It's a state of profound peace and liberation, a cessation of the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. It's an awakening to the reality of interdependence and impermanence, a realization of the interconnectedness of all beings. This might seem like an unattainable ideal, a distant dream, but remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Every moment of mindfulness, every act of compassion, every insight into the nature of reality brings us closer to this state of liberation. Nirvana, the cessation of suffering, is a state of ultimate peace and liberation. This is the promise of Nirodha, the third noble truth. It's a beacon of hope in our journey towards enlightenment, a reminder that suffering can indeed end. The fourth and final noble truth, Magga, provides a practical path to end suffering. This path, known as the Eightfold Path, is not a series of steps to be followed in sequence, but rather 8 aspects of life to be cultivated simultaneously. The first aspect is right understanding. This is about seeing the world as it truly is, not as we think or want it to be. It's about understanding the nature of reality, including the truths of impermanence, dissatisfaction, and the absence of a permanent self. Next is right thought, which involves directing our mental energy towards compassionate rather than harmful ends. It's about cultivating thoughts of love and understanding, and letting go of thoughts rooted in desire, ill will, and ignorance. The third aspect, right speech, speaks to the power of our words. It encourages us to speak truthfully, kindly, and helpfully, and to avoid harmful speech, including lying, harsh words, gossip, and idle chatter. Then we have right action, which involves behaving ethically and abstaining from actions that harm ourselves or others. This includes not killing, stealing, or engaging in sexual misconduct. Right livelihood is the fifth aspect. This is about choosing a job that contributes to our own and others' well-being and avoiding work that causes harm. Next is right effort, which involves cultivating wholesome qualities and abandoning unwholesome ones. It's about making an effort to improve, without straining ourselves or becoming overly critical. The seventh aspect, right mindfulness, is about being fully aware and present in each moment. It's about observing our body, feelings, mind, and the world around us without getting caught up in our thoughts or judgments. Finally, right concentration involves training our mind to be calm and focused. This is usually developed through practices such as meditation. The Eightfold Path serves as a guide, leading us towards understanding, peace, and ultimately liberation.